Hi, I'm indie actress Jen Page from Dorkness Rising, Geek Seekers, Chopstocky Boom, and more, and you're listening to Genretainment.
Hi everyone, welcome to Genretainment. If this happens to be your first time listening to us, then you probably should know that Genretainment is part of the SciFiPulseRadio.com network. And we're your hosts, Marks.
And Julie.
I'm the author of the book Television on the Wild Wild Web, a script writer, filmmaker, and some might say part-time superhero.
Some might. Some might not. And I'm a writer, actress, and I don't know, not much else. And Genretainment is where we talk about what's happening in the world of film, TV, books, and web series. We give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not-so-independent creations.
So humble, just what a superhero would do in their secret identity.
Shh. No one's supposed to know.
Well, this is episode 126, and our guest this time is actress, writer, and web series creator Kate Hackett. She's probably best known as the star and creator of the web series Classic Alice, and she's worked on a wide range of projects over the last few years.
Well, Kate tells us about Classic Alice, her most recent film, The Long Dig. She gives us insight into how to run a successful Patreon project, and she tells us the kind of stories that she enjoys in books, on TV, and more.
Now, before we start the interview, we should mention that the music you hear at the start and end of the show is from our friend T. Sean Hardy, who composed this theme song for our web series Reality on Demand. Now, let's get started with the interview. Well, hi, Kate. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, people who may not be as familiar with you, you've been in the web series community for a while, and you've worked on a lot of great projects. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started with acting and writing?
Sure. I moved to LA to be an actor, and then a couple years into that, I kind of realized, I'm not a moron. I should probably write my own stuff as well. And I did, and it did very well. So the first thing I wrote was like a couple of sketches, and they were fine. I mean, I don't think they like blew up or did anything other than one of them hit the front page on Funny or Die, which was kind of cool. But then I wrote Kate and Joe Just Want to Have Sex and did a little mini crowdfunder for that, and that started to get a little bit of buzz. And then I did Classic Alice, which was enormous and ran for 2 years and is now on Amazon. And then after that, I did Not a Plan, which is also on Amazon now. So those experiences made me really realize that I like making my own stuff. I like being in charge. I like writing, and sort of went from there, I guess.
For those people who maybe haven't seen Classic Alice yet, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the character gets a bad grade on a test, and she decides, or an essay, and she decides to live her life according to different classic novels. So each season is a book. We started with Crime and Punishment, and we did 13 different books. It ran for a really long time.
I notice there's a lot of literature references and such in your work. Are you a big book nerd then?
Yeah, I love reading. I was actually a history major, so there are also lots of goofy winks to history stuff. One of my favorite things was in the Macbeth arc, the 3 witches were history majors, just because we can always tell you, hey, this is going to happen, but no one ever listens to us. So I thought it was a very perfect parallel, and it made me laugh.
So Classic Alice, you're still on YouTube, but you start moving things to Amazon Prime, and I'm just wondering how that experience is and how it differs from YouTube.
Dude, it was wonderful. And then Amazon decided they wanted to dick us the way YouTube has dicked us. So I don't know what, so they, the first couple months, it was great. And the process is a little bit more cumbersome because it does not reward, quantity where you have uploads every week, which means that all you have are vloggers. It rewards people watching it, which is what it should be. And their metrics for finding you are better, blah, blah, blah. Uploading itself is a little bit more difficult because you have to have closed captions, and those files are a pain in the ass. So wound up, because Classic Alice was so long, we had to do a teeny tiny crowdfunder for that, because I was like, I'm not paying for this. This is nuts. Because it's $2 a minute or something, and the show is gazillions of minutes long. So that is a little bit more of a pain, and their image files are more of a pain, but it was totally worth it. I have no idea if it will be worth it with their new setup. I doubt it. It is really atrocious. They basically halved everybody's income. It sucks. It just sucks. And there's nowhere else for us to go. So, like, what do you do?
Yeah. For people who may not be as familiar with how that works with YouTube and Amazon, how do creators usually get paid? And how, most importantly, how did that change recently for those two people?
You get paid via a rev share. So you get a percent, and it's usually a very small percent of ads that they sell. When Classic Alice was on YouTube and airing every week, I think we were looking at tops $200 a month. On Amazon, and we're talking, this isn't apples to apples because the show has already aired and it's, done. We were making double that for a little while to get to, like, we didn't just right out of the gate make that. But a rev share just means you're making a tiny amount off of what they are making. And that's stupid and shitty because we did all the work. All you're doing is giving us a platform. Like, you should totally make money off of it. But you did nothing. You didn't have to there's no, like, investment risk for Amazon or YouTube. So f*** you guys. Can I curse? Sure. I'm cursing. All right. So it makes me angry. It makes me angry because they take advantage of independent creators who have no other option, and they deliver these opiate to the masses kind of things with, like, the YouTube space. That sucks. It's smoke and mirrors. You're giving us something when really you should be giving us money.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. At least with a traditional publisher, like in book publishing, they take a big chunk, but at least they're paying everything up front, expenses, and there's not as much risk financially. They're taking some risk. With video platforms, there's no risk. So
none at all. So why are you guys getting so much of the profit,
Well, that's too bad. I didn't know Amazon had changed their policy recently.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. I think it they announced it a month or two ago, and it goes into effect for the March payment cycle. So we'll see what that does. I'm curious.
Yeah. I know the YouTube changes hit a lot of YouTube creators pretty hard recently.
I saw that, yeah. Yeah.
So it's a downer.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I have a lot of feelings about it, but I don't have a great solution.
I know. I wish there'd be a new platform that's more indie focused.
But that's kind of been going on since the internet began. Like, what if we had a better platform for this? And nobody can seem to really get it off the ground because it's so difficult to build up a huge audience base that allows for indie creators to put stuff out. It just nothing seems to make sense. Nobody has figured it out. And I don't think I'm the person to figure it out because I have other stuff to do.
You're too busy creating. So now you've been using Patreon for a little while now, and it seems to be going fairly well.
That's been great. Yeah. So I think as an effort to kind of bridge the gap between nonsense garbage rev share models and artists like, I can't afford to eat, Patreon came in with basically like a constant, not a crowdfunder because you're not funding one thing, but it's just a constant tip jar. It's one location where you can go and, put a couple bucks in if you like what somebody's doing. I really like it. I like they constantly look for ways to change and make better. There are a couple things that Patreon does not do. I've been very vocal with them. They don't offer a great find, you can't find new people, which kind of sucks. The burden is really on the artist to bring people from other platforms to this platform, which is nuts. Like, that's just super hard to do. But it has been really great. So my Patreon is patreon.com/Kate Hackett, and it's been pretty life-changing. Like, I got to cut back my day job hours significantly and focus more on writing and that kind of stuff. So it's been nice.
That's good.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you offer your patrons?
So what I have learned, and this is a new thing that I've learned, people don't sign up on Patreon for the rewards. Like, when you do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, a lot of people sign up for like, oh, I want this t-shirt or I want the mug or whatever. But when you're doing this monthly, people care less about the stuff they get and more just about being part of your team and being supportive and they believe in you or whatever. So I offer perks and things. I offer like signed photos or one-on-one chats or, we have a group hangout that we do once a month. But those are by and large bonuses more than they are I'm only signing up for this thing. Like, I don't really, people have to care about you and what you do more than they care about the stuff they get. So that is a thing I learned this week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been on Patreon?
Well, I had it for, I don't know, a year or two maybe before I really started paying attention to it because I couldn't quite figure out what to do with it. I think I joined it as as Classic Alice was ending, but it didn't overlap with the show enough. So like I had this huge fan base, but they didn't know about the Patreon because I was like, do I steer them there? How do I get that? And it wound up just sort of sitting there quietly. And then last August, I had gone to Europe in July and I got back and I was like, you know what? Having 2 weeks off, not tutoring at all. That's my day job. I tutor. Like, it's exhausting. That is a mentally taxing day job, which is good for me. I enjoy it. But it was so tiring. I was not writing and I certainly wasn't shooting anything. So I like made nothing. And that's not why I moved here. So I came back and was, I had all this lovely time off. I had all of these ideas. I wrote all this stuff. I want to do this all the time. How can I get my Patreon to help with that? And I kicked it into high gear. I got really lucky. I have some amazing patrons who are really supportive. So that's been great.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so the last couple of months, really, I've worked really hard to get it more active and a more vibrant community. And now I think people are friends with each other. Like I have a Discord server for them and it's more community than it is just like me based, if that makes sense.
Sure. That's good.
Yeah.
So if you were going to give someone a tip who is listening, because we have a lot of creators who listen to different formats, and they're thinking about using Patreon, what would you suggest for them on how to get started?
I would say go to mine and then look at how I've set it up. Like I'm making a decent amount. I have a good number of patrons on there. I'm not perfect, but I went to a bunch of different creator Patreons and like stole from them egregiously. But see how I've set it up and steal from it, like set it up that way until you get your footing and figure out your voice, and then you can set it up the way that you want to set it up. But I think it's a really good skeleton and base. Like I've got a video, I've got the story. And when you're doing Patreon, the key is to be very open and honest, which is a little bit tricky because you're taught like, stiff upper lip your way through. And if you've chosen to be an artist, you're choosing to live a difficult life and you shouldn't be complaining about it. But your supporters want to know all of it. They really want to know like what's going on. Why is this hard? How can we help? And you're asking people for help. So you should ask for people's help. But I think the first step is look at how other successful I never know what to call us, creators have done and copy from them and see what you can do there. And the other thing is you got to shout about this thing constantly. I think somewhere like people have to read or hear or see something like 5 times before they go and do it. I might be making that number up, but it's several times before they go and remember to actually pay for it or sign up for it. Mm-hmm. So you have to do that. You have to build your audience. Patreon does not really help you with that. And I think that's dumb and weird, but that's how it is. And if you have questions, by all means, like ask on Twitter, ask on, Patreon's very responsive. People who are on Patreon are pretty responsive. Like they want to help other people. So it's a nice little community too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then for web series creators or maybe indie filmmakers, any suggestions you would give them?
Good luck. I don't know, man. I think I don't personally watch very many web series. I don't like sitting in front of. First of all, I don't create stuff to be watched on your phone. So it kind of bugs me which sounds so snobby, but it kind of bugs me when people are like, "I'm just gonna watch this in between class." Like, no, sit down, put it on your TV. Got it. But so I don't really watch very many web series. I'm not a big web series connoisseur, but they're a nice gateway. First of all, you can make something, which is important, and it's a place where you can try to jump from small potatoes to bigger potatoes, and you shouldn't look at it as your end goal. This is a stepping stone. I think that's the biggest myth that seems like I get asked a lot, like, do you think there's a future in web series? Sure, there's a future in it as a stepping stone to other bigger, better productions. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. This is not where you want to land forever.
What sometimes I suggest is that it's sort of like how short films were for feature films. That's kind of how web series are
Absolutely.
for long form.
They are mini, they're digestible short films or TV series. And that's great. I think that's an awesome, I wish there was, like with short films, festival circuits, arcade, they love it. There's nowhere to really do that with web yet, or maybe ever. I don't know that will happen, because sometimes they do get really long. Like Classic Alice was it was 2 feature films. So where do you show that in a bite-sized capacity? It's a little tricky.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get a little bit back about you real quick. So, what is it that you love so much about classic literature?
I mean, it's not specific to classic literature. That I picked because it's free. I didn't have to pay for the rights for it.
It's true.
So I love world building. Mm-hmm. So I like video games and, Game of Thronesy kind of shows and Game of Thronesy kind of books. I love world building and big, expansive playgrounds for you to just imagine stuff and go to. So that's actually, I just shot more editing right now, a short called The Long Dig, and it was based off of Electric Purple Studios' tabletop game, like an RPG game. Mm-hmm. Those worlds are enormous. They're so detailed. You can tell bazillions of stories in that kind of world. And I love when I feel like I could live in this universe for a really long time and not dry out of stories. That's what I really like about books and all media, like any kind of entertainment. This is not the answer to your question at all. I have gone so far off on a tangent. That's what I really like. So if classic literature offers that feeling, mm-hmm. great. I think there are books that have these. If it's a classic book or movie or whatever, there's something in there that touches a universal theme. There's something that everybody can relate to somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that's also really cool. Like, every person has this experience. It doesn't matter how old you are or where you're from or whatever. Everybody knows what it's like to not be loved by someone you like, or, whatever the plot line is. To be curious about, for Crime and Punishment, to be curious about if you do something really terrible, what happens to you? Like, even though we probably wouldn't walk around admitting, like, yeah, I wonder what would happen if I murder someone. It has to have touched people in such a way that everybody kind of wonders that kind of thing, mm-hmm. if that makes sense.
Oh, sure. So what do you read? You touched on a little bit. Do you read fantasy, watch fantasy?
I read everything. Yeah, I'm reading Lincoln in the Bardo. I just finished a humongous book on the Romanovs. So that was nonfiction. I read whatever crosses my plate, really. I will read it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Long Dig.
Yes, okay. The Long Dig.
When you say RPG, is that like a pen and paper RPG or a video game?
Yeah, it is. So like in these the origin story of The Long Dig, I'll give you this wowing tale. So my friend Tom and I have been trying to work together forever. and we would throw scripts back and forth, and we would be like, nah, nah. And so he was like, well, tell me what you're looking for. And I said, I don't know. I kind of want to do something sci-fi or fantasy, because those genres tend to offer really strong female characters. They just gravitate towards that. So he goes, okay, I have a short story that I wrote. We can't do this one because it doesn't belong to me, but like read it and see if this is the right world for you. And I read it and I loved it. And he was like, no, I told you not this one. So we went to, he wrote it for the rule book, because those rule books are so boring without, art and stories and stuff like that. So they had him write short stories for it. So we went to the guys who made the game and we said, hey, can we make this into a movie, and maybe we can time it to release with the game? And Tim Vaughn, the guy at Electric Purple, was like, yes, also here's money. And Tom and I were like, whoa, this worked out great. So we made a movie. So there's going to be a movie with this indie tabletop RPG, which is really cool.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks really good. It looks so real and creepy. And we have a CGI monster that we're making, and that thing looks terrifying. I'm really proud of it.
Well, awesome. That's very cool. Oh, I'm sorry. What was the name of the game?
The name of the game is Aeronauts.
Aeronauts. Okay.
Yeah.
To check it out when it comes out.
Yeah.
So, when is that slated to premiere?
The movie, we were hoping later this year, maybe end of the year kind of thing, but we're not totally sure. The CGI aspect of it is going to take, the time it takes. Right now, our edit is pretty close, we think, which is great. We finished shooting end of January, so it's not easy to edit an action film that you shot in 2 days. It's a tricky thing. So I'm happy with the pace we're on right now. I think the CGI will slow us down, though.
Usually action films, if you have any choreography, you got a lot more quick takes sometimes, since it's a lot more cutting.
Yeah, what happened was it's a 15-page action film that we shot in 2 days. And on the page, if you're running, right, like it doesn't take very long to say character runs, but it takes a lot longer to shoot that than it does indicate on the page. So there's a lot of footage, and then there's some stuff that we maybe didn't have time to get multiple coverages of, and I'll look at a take and I'll be like, I don't love this, can we? And the editor's like, no, we cannot, you did not shoot it, so no. Okay.
Well, cool. I look forward to seeing that. So is there any genres in television you watch?
Yes, all of them.
All of them.
I'm not. I mean, that's also part of my job. Like as a writer and an actor, I need to know kind of what's on, at least insofar as what's on that I would be on. I'm not a huge network sitcom or drama person. That I without like angering a network, it's not my jam. Which doesn't mean that I wouldn't be on it. I would definitely, but I love The Good Place is probably and This Is Us. Those are some network shows that I really like. But single camera comedies tend to be my turning point. I love stuff on like Better Call Saul is great. I'm rewatching Parks and Rec because I wanted to feel simultaneously hopeful and deeply saddened. So, of course, Game of Thrones, Veep, that kind of stuff. Anything smart is where I wind up enjoying myself.
So how do you think Game of Thrones is going to end?
Oh, I don't fucking care anymore. This season was so bad, man.
Oh, you didn't like this season? Too fast? It is very different.
Not even too... Well, I did think the pace... Like, why did they shorten it? That's so silly. But it felt incredibly predictable. So the whole exciting thing about Game of Thrones, in my opinion, is that actions have consequences. And sometimes they're consequences you can't predict. But when you think back on it, you're like, oh, yeah. So-and-so did such and such, which meant that this person did that, and here we are. So, like, the Red Wedding was so cool because you could trace it back to a mistake that Rob made. He f***ed up. And this season it was just like, okay, cool. Murder dragons. This looks neat, but there's no emotional payoff here. Jamie not dying was ridiculous. I'm spoiling this for everyone. Do not listen to this if you have not watched this season's Game of Thrones. Jamie should have died. It's crazy that he didn't. There's some, and I don't care about Daenerys and Jon Snow. That is such a yawn to me because it's so obvious. I don't care. Ugh.
Yeah, most recent season was more your standard Hollywood format. Yeah.
It was, and that's really disappointing to me. I know that Jon and Daenerys are endgame in the book too, which kind of bums me out and makes me not really want to read it. But
who'd you want them to pair? Who were you shipping instead?
Nobody. I don't want anyone to get together because you're at fucking war. You should be concentrating on the war. Like, you can bone later. And the Sansa story this season was really a bummer. Like, they were acting their hearts out with that, but it was just like, come on. Yuck.
Well, it's almost over. But...
Yeah. I mean, I'll watch it. I'm gonna be angry the whole time. I'm gonna angry watch it.
And they're gonna do spin-offs and all that stuff, so who knows what.
I am excited about the spin-offs. I don't think the two head writers are in charge of those, but I love that world. Like, I think there's so much in there to play with. I am super bummed that we didn't really get. Are you familiar with book Game of Thrones? Do you know that whole?
I haven't read all those books, okay. But I know a
little
bit.
I'm going to say things and you're going to be like, I don't know, Kate. But like, I was bummed that we didn't get into the Sea Star stuff and the bastard children. And there's a whole subplot that it didn't need, but I like it because I like the history of this kind of thing. Like, my ex-fiance made fun of me because I have this like huge fake history book of a fake world that I am into. Like, I'll sit and trace family trees and he's like, this isn't real. I don't care.
That's good. It's good. Especially as a writer, you got to have that mindset.
Yeah. I like real history too. So it's up my alley. And then you can also see like his stories are based on historical events. So it's kind of fun. I think book readers watching the show for the first like 4 or 5 seasons spent a good portion of their enjoyment going, haha, I know what's going to happen and you don't. Mm-hmm. As a student of history, like, I watch this show still and I'm like, I know what this is and you don't. It's just like, it's War of the Roses but with dragons. I'm smart. So it's that feeling and I really enjoy
cool
that. Yeah.
Is there any existing book series, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever, that you think would make a good TV show that hasn't happened yet?
I feel like if Patrick Rothfuss's hasn't been optioned, I would be surprised. But I think that's everybody's looking for the next Game of Thrones, so I would be surprised if the big ones aren't getting that treatment. I'm peering at my bookshelf right now because I have a bookshelf for series of books and I'm trying to figure out like which ones. The Magicians has already been done. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what would be great? Have you read the Thursday Next series?
Nope.
Oh, so good. So Jasper, I think, Ford, I don't know how to say his last name. He wrote this series of books and it's about this woman who can like go into novels and she, runs around and has adventures. That would be really cool. I would watch that forever.
Oh, that sounds good. What was it again?
Yeah.
Next?
Thursday Next.
Thursday Next. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
I'm an avid reader also, but usually just, it's a mixture of stuff, but a lot of sci-fi, fantasy and stuff.
Okay, cool. What would you want out there?
What I want?
Yeah.
I asked the question. I'm teasing.
No, I'm asking.
Gosh, I don't know. I have to look at a bookshelf here.
You see?
I think it would be very, very hard to translate. I do think there's a lot of potential in Wild Cards book series.
I think I've read that one.
It's a shared world, a lot of anthology stories. It's edited by George R.R. Martin. It's a lot of superheroes, but it's like, what if superheroes really existed, and what would that look like? And it goes through. It originally starts like right after World War II, and then the first few books are like historical pieces that went throughout America's history.
I'm going to put a cap on this particular series because if he doesn't fucking finish Game of Thrones, I'm going to hold you personally responsible.
Well, Wildcard's a little different because it's a weird anomaly in publishing in a way because it's been around since like the 80s.
Yeah.
And so there's like different time periods, I guess, because they stopped for a long time. They like wrapped up stuff. And then they started back up a few years ago. Had a trilogy that was like, it was really weird. It was like touching on stuff about the Middle East while also touching on reality TV and stuff. Like they make a reality TV show of trying to put together a hero team, but they have to go and fight in the Middle East. It's very gritty and real there in the Middle East. Yeah, so it gets really history-ish. So in some places, if you like...
Again, though, I don't want him writing that instead of...
No. Well, he doesn't. He edits, he writes some of them, and then there's a bunch of other sci-fi writers who write the other stories, like a lot of them that have
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, become big writers in their own right. So it's interesting. It's very dark though. Yeah. Very dark. Some very dark twists.
Dark.
But yeah, stuff like that. What do you think of Magicians? Do you like that adaptation?
I thought it was really clever what they did. They set it up so that the books and the show can exist in the same universe because they've made it so that like alternate timelines exist. I don't know if have you watched it?
I've watched the first 2 seasons. I haven't watched the third.
Okay. So it was in the first 2 seasons where they established that like they exist on multiple planes. And I really liked that as a device for like they can depart from the books and they're not stuck in that, that story. I really loved the books though. Like, but they can move in different directions and I'm not left going, wait a minute, what?
So that's the whole time loop thing that they had? Is that?
Yeah.
So one of those is supposed to be the book, I guess? Is that what?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Isn't that cool? I thought that was very smart. I really liked that decision.
That's cool.
Yeah. I like, after that episode, I like stopped and thought about it for a while. I was like, I really like that. I live alone and talking to one.
That's all right. It's all right. All right. So I guess one more tip, if you don't mind, as an actress, just an acting, like for somebody who's going into acting and trying to start a career, what would you suggest for them?
I have lots of tips for this, actually. First, do not just study acting. I think you should be a well-rounded person because when you are acting, you are inhabiting other people's skins, and most of those people are not actors. So you don't want to pigeonhole yourself as a person in your life, but you also don't want to pigeonhole your work. So I mean, I'm not saying don't major in acting, don't study it, but consider double majoring if you must study acting. I also think it's important to stay in class because when you're not, it's not something that you peak and like you don't learn all of it. Like, you learn algebra, you've learned algebra or whatever. There's always more to it. There's more to learn and uncover because it's very fluid. So stay in class, take breaks, but always be ready to go back. Don't get locked in. I guess this goes with the first thing, like don't get locked into just being an actor. Find other things you are good at and do those as well. It's people here especially have this like shame about if you're not just acting, you're a failure. And I think that's really stupid because super successful actors don't just act anymore. They also produce and they throw their weight around and they do other things. And it's so much more fulfilling to know that, yeah, okay, I didn't get that job, but I'm going to make my own job and I'm going to be good in that instead. There's a lot that you can't control. So pick something that you can and do that too.
Cool.
Yeah.
With your own acting, is there a certain approach you take that you've been taught, or you just?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of things. So it depends on the character. Some characters are really easy for me, and I don't have to do a lot of backstory work. Some characters are more difficult, so you need to spend more time with them. but when I get a script, I ask myself, who am I? What do I want? What would make me happy in this moment? What's my problem? Who is the other person? Who does this person remind me of in my life? What am I not going to admit? You know, what am I hiding or unable to say even to myself? And then I kind of try to get the words down. My personal problem, I guess, is that I'm a thinker. I'm smart and I think, and then you get in your head, and acting isn't necessarily about like thinking. You have to just be. So I try to get it all out on the page and then stop thinking, which is hard. That's not easy. So
I see that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I guess that's my approach.
What was the hardest character you ever had to play?
I'm actually in class right now. I'm playing. Have you seen Doubt?
I don't think so.
So it was with Meryl Streep and Amy Adams and what's his face, who died? Philip Hoffman. Blech.
Oh yeah.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. So the play, it's a play as well, and the movie and the play are about the 60s, and an African American boy enrolls in parochial school. He's the only African American boy there, and a priest is assigned to the school, and the head of the school is the nun, his sister Aloysius, and she thinks that the priest is sexually abusing the boy, and he insists that he is. So the whole play is, there is no answer. You do not know at the end of it, did he do it or not? So she strongly thinks that he did. He is saying he did not. And then Sister James is Amy Adams' character, and she's kind of caught in the middle. She's a new nun. She's very young. She's like, I don't know who to believe here. I don't know who to respect. And the Catholic Church is very hierarchical, and it's very male dominated. So the priest is always in charge of everything, even if he's kind of parallel to the nun. Anyway, so in that, I am not playing, so in class, I'm not playing Sister James, which is the character that I would be playing, like, if this were out and about real life. I'm playing Meryl Streep's character, and it's really hard because I know how old she is written to be, and I am not that, and so I'm having to fight that preconceived notion, and I'm struggling a little bit with that, and then a little bit with, like, how do you behave with, I'm not a nun, how do you behave with a priest who you think had sex with a child, but you can't confront him? Like, there's no CPS, there's no, where do you go? I'm struggling with it, partially because the character is not something I would be playing at this point in my life, which is the point. Like, you want to stretch and try things that you wouldn't get outside of class, in class. So that's my current frustration. But as far as as far as characters that have been hard in the real world, it's actually funny. We don't, until you're working, you tend to get the same kind of character over and over again. And it isn't usually too very far from you. So I don't think I've been cast in something and had a really difficult struggle finding that character.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that just about wraps it up. Before we go, though, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and your work?
Yes. Okay. So patreon.com/Kate Hackett is #1 best, most awesome way to stay in touch with me, because it's smaller and I can definitely talk to you. The second thing is Twitter. I'm at Hackett Kate. And on Instagram, I'm at Hackett Kate. And then Facebook, I think I'm like /actress Kate Hackett. So those are the places to go find me, and then we can be friends from there.
Hey everybody, this is Jordan Gibson. I play Dark Star on Super Knocked Up, the web series, and you're listening to Genre-tainment.
Thanks to Kate for chatting with us. We will have all the links mentioned on the episode in the show notes.
Well, so that's it for today's episode of Genre-tainment. But before we go, we want to remind you that you can always keep track of us by subscribing to us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or by following our Genre-tainment Facebook page, Marks' Twitter account, which is at Mr. Marks, by clicking over to genretainment.com, or you can follow all of the shows at sci-fipostradio.com.
We're back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series. Genre Entertainment is a production of Alien Jungle Bug Productions.
Until next time. Bad monkey.